They say the train never made a sound, but everyone who saw it heard something else first. In the summer of 1878, Silver Canyon was alive in a way few places in the desert ever were. The mines had struck deep, the veins were rich, and every ounce of silver pulled from the rock meant money moving east. Not just money, but power. Railroads were the arteries of the West. And for the first time, a single train was scheduled to carry more silver than any shipment before it. According to official railroad manifests, the locomotive departed just before dawn. 1 engine, 6 freight cars, guards posted on both sides, armed men hired not by the railroad, but by the mine owners themselves. The route was simple, out of Silver Canyon, through 40 miles of open desert, then north to connect with the main line. No towns, no stations, no reason to stop. The engineer was a veteran. The conductor had run that route for years. Nothing about that morning suggested history was about to fracture. By sunset, the train had not arrived. At first, no one panicked. Delays were common, sand on the tracks, mechanical trouble. But by the second night, the telegraph lines began to hum with concern. By the third, riders were sent out along the rails. They found nothing. The tracks ran straight into the desert, unbroken, undisturbed, until they simply didn't. No derailment, no explosion, no twisted metal or scattered cargo. The rails continued onward, empty, clean, as if the train had passed through and then ceased to exist. The official investigation began within days. Railroad detectives, federal marshals, private security men, they walked the line on foot. They searched the surrounding miles for signs of bandit sabotage or hidden sightings. They questioned everyone who had seen the train depart. Every answer matched. The report concluded that the train had been stolen, that a highly organized gang must have uncoupled the cars, rolled them off onto some hidden spur, and hauled the silver away piece by piece. The desert, the report claimed, simply hid the evidence too well. It was a neat explanation, efficient, reassuring. The public accepted it. Life moved on. Silver Canyon dried up. The mines collapsed. The tracks rusted. The story of the lost train faded into local folklore, retold as a clever heist pulled off by men smarter than the law, until the sightings began. Decades later, long after the canyon had emptied and the rails had fallen silent, travelers started reporting something strange. A light in the distance, a vibration in the ground, a low metallic rhythm that didn't belong to the wind. Some swore they saw it just before midnight. A locomotive, intact, polished, moving slowly through the abandoned pass. No smoke, no steam, no whistle, just steel cutting through darkness where no train should have been able to run. Railroad officials dismissed the stories as hallucinations. Drunks, pranksters, moonlight playing tricks on the eyes. But the reports kept coming, always the same details, always from people who had nothing to gain. The train never stopped. It never acknowledged witnesses. And it was always moving in the same direction the silver train had taken the night it vanished. The version of the story that became public settled into a familiar shape. A daring robbery, a perfect crime, a legend inflated over time by superstition and imagination. The ghost sightings were explained away as echoes of memory, the human mind filling in gaps where certainty was uncomfortable. That is the story most people know. But when you look closer, the story begins to crack. There are no records of gang large enough to pull off such an operation operating in that region at the time. No sudden influx of silver in nearby towns. No black market flooding. No arrests. No confessions. Not even rumors consistent enough to point to a single group. More troubling is the track evidence. Investigators noted that there were no signs of heavy braking, no marks where cars were uncoupled under stress, no footprints clustered around the supposed point of disappearance. For a theft that would have required hours and manpower, the ground told a story of absolute stillness. Then there are the logs. Railway maintenance records show that decades after the disappearance, crews inspecting the abandoned line reported unexplained wear on the rails through Silver Canyon. Fresh scoring, compression marks, metal fatigue consistent, with weight passing over them. Weight equivalent to a fully loaded freight train. No authorized train had used that line in years. And yet the rails remembered something. Eyewitnesses, separated by time and distance, describe the same details without knowing each other's accounts. The same number of cars, the same dim glow from within, the same unnatural silence, broken only by a sound they struggle to explain. Not a whistle, not an engine, but something like a deep, distant pressure. Even the official paperwork contains anomalies. The final investigation report was closed unusually fast. Key witness statements were summarized rather than archived. Several pages of the original Telegraph transcripts were never recovered. The names of 2 guards listed on the manifest do not appear in any census records before or after the incident. It is as if the story was intentionally simplified, as if complexity was dangerous. The public was given a version that answered questions quickly, cleanly, and without demanding further thought. A story that fit the world as people understood it. But the desert has a habit of preserving what it's told to forget. Before we talk about theories, before we speculate about what the train might be or where it goes, we need to confront something far more unsettling. The possibility that the story we were given was never meant to be true, only believable. And once you see the cracks in that version, it becomes impossible not to ask what was left out. That is where the real mystery begins. When the official story begins to fall apart, what remains are the possibilities that no one wanted to say out loud. The first theory emerged quietly, almost reluctantly, among railway engineers and surveyors who reviewed the old maps decades later. It had nothing to do with ghosts, bandits, or curses. It was mechanical, geological, boring on the surface, and deeply unsettling underneath. Silver Canyon, according to later studies, sat on unstable ground. Beneath the desert crust were pockets of collapsed caverns, abandoned mine shafts, and natural sinkholes masked by wind-blown sand. The theory suggests that somewhere along the route, the ground simply gave way, not in an explosion, not in a dramatic collapse, but in a slow, silent failure. The way of the locomotive, the silver, the momentum, all of it sinking straight down into the earth. Proponents argue that the desert then did what it does best: erase. Wind fills gaps. Sand smooths scars. In days, perhaps hours, the evidence could have vanished. The train, according to this theory, is still there, buried, preserved in darkness beneath the canyon floor. But this explanation struggles under scrutiny. A collapse large enough to swallow a full freight train would have left fractures along the rails, stress marks, distortions, yet the tracks were found perfectly aligned. And even if the train had sunk vertically, the sound alone would have carried for miles. No one reported hearing anything that morning. No tremor, no thunder, just absence. And then there is the problem of the sightings. Metal does not rise from underground and glide along rails decades later, which leads to the second theory, the one officials never acknowledged publicly, but quietly investigated anyway: a controlled disappearance. According to this version, the train was never meant to arrive. The silver cargo was insured at a value far exceeding its actual weight. The guards were contractors with no fixed identities. The route conveniently isolated. The theory proposes that the disappearance was engineered by interests far more powerful than outlaws. Financiers, railroad executives, men who understood that losing a train on paper could be more profitable than delivering it. In this scenario, the train was diverted onto a temporary spur that never appeared on public maps. The silver was unloaded elsewhere, redistributed, laundered into the economy. The crew was paid to vanish, reassigned, or silenced. The official investigation was intentionally shallow, designed not to uncover truth, but to close the case quickly. This would explain the missing paperwork, the rushed conclusions, the guards who never existed on census records. It would explain why no silver ever flooded the market, because it was already spoken for, but it does not explain the train itself. Even the most elaborate conspiracy cannot account for witnesses describing the same locomotive, intact, moving on dead rails long after the line was abandoned. You can erase records. You can buy silence. You cannot manufacture shared experiences across generations, which is why the third theory refuses to stay buried, no matter how uncomfortable it makes people. The idea that the train never left, not in the way we understand leaving. Some researchers point to rare atmospheric conditions documented in desert regions, extreme temperature inversions, electromagnetic disturbances, pressure anomalies capable of distorting sound, light, even perception, combined with the immense energy of a steam locomotive and the mineral density of the canyon itself. The theory suggests a moment where something went catastrophically wrong. Not a crash, a displacement. The train, according to this idea, slipped out of its proper place in time. Not destroyed, not stolen, simply misaligned, existing on a parallel track of reality, intersecting with ours only under specific conditions. Late at night, cold air, absolute stillness. This would explain the silence, the lack of steam, the way witnesses describe the train as solid, yet distant, as if separated by an invisible barrier. It would explain why it never stops, never interacts, never acknowledges the present world. And it would explain the rail wear, because something heavy is still passing through Silver Canyon, just not entirely here. Of course, this theory is dismissed most aggressively, labeled superstition, science fiction, the kind of explanation people reach for when facts fail. But facts have already failed. No bodies were found, no wreckage, no silver, no credible perpetrators. Just a train that left and never arrived, and a desert that refuses to forget it. At this point in the story, most documentaries would tell you which theory to believe. They would rank them, debunk two, endorsing one as the most reasonable. But reason depends on how much uncertainty you're willing to tolerate. The buried train requires us to accept that the earth swallowed something without a trace. The conspiracy requires us to believe an operation of impossible precision left behind a ghost. The displacement requires us to accept that the world is not as stable as it appears. What remains constant across all versions is this: something happened in Silver Canyon that morning that does not fit cleanly into any box we built for it. The desert tracks are still there, rusted, crooked, silent, and yet, long after the last official inspection, long after the maps were redrawn, people still report the same thing: a pressure in the air, a sense of movement without sound, the feeling that something enormous has just passed. Even when nothing is visible, there is a moment, usually late at night, when the wind dies completely, when the canyon seems to hold its breath. Some say that's when the rails hum faintly, not with vibration, but with memory. If a train can vanish without being destroyed, if evidence can disappear while experience remains, then the question is no longer what happened to the ghost train of Silver Canyon. The question becomes what it means that it was never truly gone. And once that idea settles in, it becomes very hard to look at empty tracks the same way again. If you're enjoying stories like this, consider leaving a like and subscribing. It helps more than you think, because some mysteries don't ask to be solved. They wait to be noticed. And once you notice them, they don't stop moving.